A few weeks ago, I bought this BMW Z4 3-litre manual with no service history whatsoever for £500. That sounds cheap. It's not in the best condition. Actually, it needs quite a lot of love. Loads of dents and scratches in the panels, a few oil leaks. I've done a few jobs on it already, includes replacing a few panels at the back. I've done the rear left quarter, I've done the boot lid, I've done the driver's side door, done an oil change and a transmission oil change. But there's one thing that I really should have done before now to figure out if this car is even worth spending the money on, and that is a compression test. That will tell me if this engine's even worth working on. I'm really hoping it is. If it isn't, then I've got a bit of a problem because I've already spent quite a lot of money on this car. So I'm going to do that right now. Let's go. So the first thing to do when you're doing a compression test is you want to find the fuel pump fuse and remove it so that you can crank the engine without the engine actually starting, because no fuel will be getting in there. These two little tabs. Yep, there's our fuse board. The fuel pump fuse that I want, 19 and 33. You're coming with me, mate. 19. Really difficult with one hand. Should be a bit easier to get. Oh no. Right, well that was cool. At least it's out. Got it. That's the fuel pump fuses out. I should now be able to crank the engine without it starting. So I'm going to take each spark plug out one by one, put my compression tester in place of it, and then I'm going to crank the engine and see what kind of reading we get. So what you're looking for when you're doing a compression test like this is that all of your cylinders are giving you readings within a pretty tight range of each other. Ultimately the range that I ended up getting was a little bit wider than I was hoping for, but what you've got to consider is that this car's done 130,000 miles. No cylinder was giving me a particularly bad reading, but it was a difference of 19 psi between the worst and the best cylinder. That's a bit more than I was hoping for, but ultimately it's not too bad, which is a good job because I've got a load of parts I would need to send back if this test went really badly. My main priority is actually fixing a load of leaks. If you saw the first episode where I got underneath it, you'll see all the leaks that I found. One of them looks like a crank seal, which I've got here. I've also got a new water pump because while I'm there, I might as well do that. I think that's an uprated one with a metal impeller. Yep. I've also obviously got a rocker cover gasket leak. I can see it smoking when the engine's running. There's also quite a lot of oil obviously around there, and it's kind of trickling down the front there. If you can, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, it's a bit dark. Really needs addressing, and obviously this car's on 130,000 miles now, and I doubt the Vanos has ever been serviced, so I figure while I'm taking the valve cover gasket off, I might as well sort the Vanos as well. So I bought this kit from X8R. It comes with everything you need there. Obviously the Vanos seals, new plugs for the Vanos unit itself, and it also comes with a full valve cover gasket replacement, so it kind of made sense just to buy this all at once. You're going to completely strip that Vanos unit and rebuild it. Yeah, with all that said and done, let's go. So working on a car without a lift is hard enough. There's a couple of good tips I can give you though to make the job a bit easier. First of all, invest in a good set of axle stands and take your time getting the car jacked up into the air. If you give yourself plenty of working room underneath the car, it really does make the job a lot easier. Secondly, invest in some of these rubber mats. I got these from Halfords. They're not very expensive, and honestly, they make rolling around underneath the car so much more bearable. Anyway, to get the access that we need for these jobs, first of all we need to remove the plastic under trays from the car. So the last time I was under the car, I spent a lot of time cleaning up all the mess that had been made from the oil leaks, just so that the next time I get underneath it, I could have a pretty clear idea of where the oil is coming from. Now if you look above the crank, you can see there's no oil, yet below the crank, once again, there's loads of oil. So I'm pretty confident that's what it is. I'm going to get it changed and revisit this in another 50 miles or so. That way I'll be able to see if I've rectified the problem. Next job is to take the two auxiliary belts off. That smaller one at the front drives the air conditioning pulley. So that's a T60 Torx bit and a steel pin there. So if you pull the tension off it and stick that steel pin in through there, that holds the tension off the belt and means that you can remove it quite easily. I inspected this belt and it didn't look too bad, to be honest. Somebody's obviously replaced this quite recently. I'm going to put the same one back on. It's an easy part to replace, so I may end up replacing that in the future just to be on the safe side. I also removed the metal under tray from beneath where the gearbox meets the engine, just because I wanted to have a look. You don't necessarily need to do that for the jobs that we're doing in this video. What you do need to do though, given that we're changing the water pump, is to drain the coolant. So there's a little drain plug in the bottom right corner of the radiator. That gets a lot of it out, but it doesn't get all of it out. Now to remove the cover from the top of the radiator at the front of the engine bay and have a good look at what we're working with. My goal is to remove the coolant expansion tank, so I'm just looking at all the hoses connecting to that and starting to disconnect them one by one. Pro tip, even when you think you've drained all the coolant, you probably haven't. It'll get you. Coolant accidents aside, it became clear that the easiest way to get the access that I needed is to remove the cooling fan altogether. This was pretty easy actually. There's just a couple of screws, one in the top left corner and one down in the bottom right that you can access from underneath really easily. And then you just pull up and out she comes. And that gives me much better access to the crank pulley, the water pump, and also to the coolant expansion tank as well. Not gonna lie, getting the pipework off that coolant expansion tank was really difficult. It was stuck on there really good. I ended up having to remove the bracket that you see there that's attached to it, that attaches it to the radiator, which I'll see in a sec. You've also got to be really careful because all this plastic is quite old at this point. It's been hot and cold so many times and it gets quite brittle, so it's really easy to break stuff. So you just got to be really careful. Yeah, I had a bit of a fight getting this out. Ended up having to take it out with this bracket that it's attached to because I couldn't separate just there where those two things join to it. But took the bracket out as well. It actually looks alright. I can't see any cracks on it. Supposedly these go when they're pressurized, that's when they leak. Now I've got it out and I've got a replacement, I might as well replace it anyway and hopefully that'll sort my coolant leak. I'm just going to leave that to one side and crack on with the next job. So to take the auxiliary belt off, I just need to take the tension off it, which is on that to 17mm socket. And then similar to the first pulley, there are two little holes, and if you align them and stick a piece of metal through there, it'll stay with the tension off, which is what I'm going to do. Change of plan. I'm not going to do these pulleys yet. The next thing to do is remove this rocker cover gasket and get the Vanos unit out, which will be exciting. So yeah, let's go. Now this is actually pretty funny for me to watch back because I make a pretty silly mistake here. The more astute of you have probably already noticed it, but it would be a lot easier to get this valve cover off if I just take those coil packs out first. That would make my job a lot easier. Oh, there we go, I've realised. Take the coil packs out and there you go. There's the valve cover off. But in all seriousness, I don't think this looks too bad for an engine with 130,000 miles on the clock. It's 18 years old. I think it looks pretty good. Let me know what you think in the comments. Honestly, this job would actually be pretty straightforward if it wasn't for that huge stupid cross member going across the front of the Z4. All the videos that I've seen online of this procedure are from E46 3 Series BMWs and they don't have that cross member, so getting to the Vanos unit you've got a lot more access. To get those front bolts out, I ended up having to just use a standard Allen key because I couldn't get my normal hex socket set in there. They were held in there pretty tight. It took quite a lot to break the lock on the bolt, but once I did, it came out really easily by hand. So I'm not gonna lie, this bit was a little bit nerve-wracking, as you can probably tell from my concentration face right there. Now I'm just pulling out the little plastic grommet things. You'll definitely need a long pair of 90-degree pliers to get those, certainly on a Z4 anyway with the access that you've got. They expose a T30 Torx bit that's reverse threaded inside the Vanos unit, which is particularly fragile I believe, so I was super careful doing this. Again, access to these bolts is a nightmare because of that cross member, so you've just got to get a little bit creative with the stuff that you've got just to be able to get those bolts out. Next, we've just got to detach everything that's attached to the Vanos. So first of all, that's the oil feed line, which is attached with an 18mm banjo bolt. There are a couple of washers on there that you might want to keep safe, but I did get replacements for those in the Vanos refurb kit that I bought. Stick that banjo bolt back in there so it doesn't get lost. And then there's a few solenoids and connectors underneath there that need to be disconnected, and there's obviously a series of nuts under this, and then I should be able to take the Vanos unit off the engine. Yep. You can actually see now I've got better access down here, the extent of the leak there, and it looks like it was leaking quite badly at the front of the Vanos somewhere, because that's probably the worst. It's absolutely caked. So I've got all of the electrical bits removed now. There's a solenoid here, solenoid down there, and a camshaft position sensor there. And then there's 7 fixings I need to remove here. So I'm just gonna get these out and I should be able to get this Vanos removed tonight. So, new problem. Now this problem is going to be unique to the Z4, I think, because of this stupid fucking cross member. I don't have enough clearance. I'm just banging into the cross member there. I can't actually pull the Vanos out. I'm going to have a bit more of a read of some more stuff and see what I can come up with. So there we have it, scupper for another day. I can't get that Vanos off. The sun's going down. It is going to stay dry tonight. So I'm going to have to call it there. It is what it is, guys. One of those things. I'm working tomorrow as well, so I'm not going to have all day to work on it, but the weather's going to be good. Fingers crossed I should be able to sort it out. On that note, yet another day where I've failed to achieve as much as I wanted to achieve, but you've got to be prepared for these things. So I'm going to have to call it there, and I'll see you tomorrow.